This is a CBS News special report. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maurice Dubois in New York, where Wall Street surged today. The Dow Jones rose about 3,000 points, closing close to 8% up. The Nasdaq spiked roughly 1,800 points, about 12%. S&P 500 jumped around 470 points, about 9%. Incredible numbers here. Comes just hours after President Trump announced a 90-day pause on tariffs for many countries, putting them all at 10% tariffs. Those, he said, who have not retaliated in any way, shape, or form. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent spoke earlier today, saying this was the president's strategy all along, and gave himself, quote, maximum leverage. Today's spike comes on the heels of that week of major volatility in the stock market after the president announced his sweeping global tariffs. A lot to digest here. Try to make some sense of all of this. Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady is here now. Can we catch our breath? What exactly just happened today, right?
I know. Look, we've seen a lot of volatility, but specifically today, you are seeing investor relief, because the fact that we have a pause means that the tariffs that went into effect at 12/01, it's not as severe for companies right now. And there's room for negotiation. There's room for deal making and for things to change in the future. I want to bring up a chart of the Dow. Actually, we've got it here right now. Look at this spike, okay? All of that green, that was when the announcement came, and it just speaks to investors going one way or another when there's such an impactful thing that is said. This was the single biggest day for the Dow in terms of a rally since 2020, and you really saw it in tech stocks that have been getting hammered, which, by the way, is good news for your 401k.
Thank goodness. I'm not looking at it, though, as most people shouldn't be. If you're an investor, what are you thinking? If you're a small business or a large business, any business of any type, how do you plan in this environment? Up, down, all around? Where are we going?
So quickly on the investor front, I've been texting with them all day. I heard one say, fool me once. We have been here before. They do not think that this is the end of volatility, so they will keep watching it. For businesses, they have to plan. Do they move production from China? Do they come to the U.S.? Do they invest billions of dollars? The signal today is, well, maybe move to some other countries with a lower tariff versus bringing here where it would cost billions and billions of dollars. For consumers, I mean, there's so much uncertainty, and we've seen that reflected in the consumer confidence numbers. I think it goes back to what I just said. There's still going to be a lot of uncertainty, still going to be a lot of volatility. And Maurice, we're about to go into earnings season. We're going to hear from a lot of companies about what their outlook is for 2025. And you're going to hear that over and over. Uncertainty. What do I do? What do I move? Because the goalpost keeps moving. Outlook uncertain. That's our headline at the moment. Kelly, thank you so much. Let's go to the White House. Senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is there. As you look at these numbers, Ed, how did the president come to this? Are we having any sense of how he arrived at doing this today?
Well, he made the announcement shortly after 1 p.m. Eastern on his social media platform. And as Kelly pointed out, within 10 minutes, the Dow had jumped 2,000 points. A little while ago on the south lawn of the White House, he was meeting with race car drivers and explained his decision.
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know, they were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid. I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate, because I told them if you retaliate, we're going to double it. And that's what I did with China, because they did retaliate. So we'll see how it all works out. I think it's going to work out amazing. I think that our country is going to be at the end of a year or shorter, but I think we're going to have something that nobody would have dreamt possible.
So the baseline tariff of 10% that went into effect on April 5th on most of the world remains in place. A 125% tariff now slapped on China, in part because earlier today it responded to the it responded to the overnight tariffs with an 84% retaliatory tariff on the United States. So that will continue. Beyond that, the other thing to keep in mind, what are called Section 232 tariffs on things like steel, aluminum, and other goods also remain in place. So negotiations are now set to commence with more than 70 countries, according to the Treasury Secretary. until at least early July. We'll see if that gets extended at some point, Maurice.
The whole situation with the markets, Ed, has everybody kind of gagging here, trying to figure out exactly what is what. We appreciate it. Ed O'Keefe at the White House. Our coverage will continue on this tariff pause, as the president is calling it. It's going to continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and tonight on the CBS Evening News. We'll get into all of it for you. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Maurice Dubois.
You've been watching a special report on the U.S. stock market soaring as President Trump announces a 90-day pause on tariffs for all trading partners except China. A historic close for the Dow today. So let's take a look at our interactive stock market. Look at this. The heat map brought to you by FinViz. It shows a visual representation, red indicating just those two spots there. The stock is down. Green means it's up. Haven't seen this in a while. And the size of the box represents the market cap. Huge gains for investors today as Wall Street gets a little relief on tariffs. So here's the headline. Trump slapped a whopping 125% tariff on China while pausing higher tariffs on all other U.S. trading partners. Every country except China now only faces a 10% reciprocal tariff. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger joining us now. Hello, Jill. Let's talk about what's happening in the markets and what happened today.
Well, it's a relief rally, and certainly the idea that the pause was there and that there are negotiations in place, certainly relief for investors. That said, this is some way to conduct policy. I mean, if you're a business owner or you're an individual and you want to think about what you're going to do for the next 3 to 5 years, you don't know what to do for the next 3 to 5 days. So I still think this leaves us with a lot of questions that are unanswered. Obviously, the president blinked because the markets were rolling over, and specifically not just the stock market, but the bond market started to look very, very unstable, and that became a focus. So I think that it is good to have a pause. It would have been nice to never have gone on this trip, thank you very much, because as investors, we know having a 12% drop in 3 or 4 sessions, we're back up 7%, but we're not all the way back where we were. Remember, these tariffs are still in place, and we have a full-on trade war with China.
Yeah, let's talk about China. Help us understand why China is Trump's biggest target.
I think this has been a real bug for him for a while. But, frankly, when he did the tariffs on Chinese goods in the first administration, remember the Biden administration kept those tariffs in place. And I believe that there's really widespread bipartisan support for making sure that we do some manufacturing of certain things like chips and processors, that should be done in the United States. That's what the Biden administration's CHIPS Act was all about. But I think the whole premise that President Trump really took to heart the fact that the Chinese came out this morning and tacked on another 50%, driving their tariff rate up to 84%. Then he goes into 125%. I used to be a soccer player and a basketball player in the ball field. We'd probably break up this fight before it got nasty.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about this round of tariff whiplash. What does this mean for American businesses looking for their next move? What does this mean for them?
I think they can't do anything. What could you possibly do under this scenario? Pretend that we own a company together, and everyone watching, we all own this company together. You tell me what we should do. When policies change within days without having any forethought as to what could happen next, that leaves a decision maker, a business, with the very unlikely choice that, like, you might be doing the right thing, but you might not. And without that kind of clarity, I don't think you can proceed. It's like you're talking about a company would, start to build a warehouse or a facility in the United States. Would you? Should you? Should you do it in Vietnam now? Should you do it in South Korea? Who knows?
All right, Jill Schlesinger. Jill, thank you so much. Now, CBS News contributor J.D. Durkin joins us now live from the New York Stock Exchange. So, J.D., how are investors reading this move from the president? Is Trump kind of backpedaling? Is this a strategic plan? What's your read?
Well, my first read is that these are the sorts of days that make me very grateful to have lots of caffeine here on the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange. There is just so much whiplash going on with major equities right now. If I were to ask 10 different people, what do you think the president's end game is? What do you think he's thinking while he negotiates and puts out these posts on Truth Social? I'd probably get at least 20 different answers. The truth is, no one exactly knows what is behind the calculus, but I can't stress enough. I think Jill Schlesinger's point there was really well taken. You're talking about real trust destruction out of the White House in the eyes of Wall Street. And here in New York, this is the financial capital of the world, but the momentum has been consolidated in the hands of not just Washington, but in particular, one man, just the president of the United States. And I think that uncertainty over tariff policy, impossible for businesses as we get closer into earnings season to issue their forward-looking guidance. That all complicates and muddies the situation that much more. But the relief rally we saw today, to Jill's point, this tells us just how desperate investors in the market were for any little bit of good news. And they finally got at least a little bit of that at 1:18 p.m. earlier today with the president's post on social media.
Yeah, a lot of green on that heat map today. So does today's leap into the green, is it enough to erase the losses that we saw over the last several days? I think I know the answer. I'm hoping it's a different answer, but tell us your answer.
Not entirely. Listen, it's certainly a step in the right direction if you want to see these markets go positive. But today itself was an 8% intraday swing. I did the math before we came live. We're still down about 12% from the February 19th highs. And we can't forget February 19th, not that long ago. That was the all-time high for the stock market. This was a fundamentally different conversation just 5 or 6 weeks ago, but we're still down about 11 or 12% from that high water mark, still down about 10% from January 20th inauguration day, still down about 5% from the election. So it's certainly a step in the right direction. We want to see some clarity. We want to see more relief rallies, but one day does not a relief rally make. That's really going to underscore the importance of the upcoming trading sessions, but even those may get thrown sideways. We've got crucial inflation prints tomorrow. We're going to hear from Fed speakers. So there's always a lot of things that are moving the markets in different directions, but it's going to be really fascinating to see what happens in tomorrow's session.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, JD, what are investors saying about the increased tariffs on China? Can we expect the stare down to continue to weigh in on Wall Street?
I don't see any other off-ramp right now except for that stare down to continue. We had evidence of China devaluing their own currency earlier this week, which is a sort of monetary policy kind of fight tit for tat and kind of additional shots across the bow. What's really interesting, if you look back at the president's post on Truth Social today, it reads like a small paragraph. And the first half of that little paragraph was all about how he is increasing the tariff rate on China. I think that actually led to a very brief further sell-off in the market that first minute. It wasn't until you get down and you read several sentences through that we got that little bit of relief that we really want. But for all of these companies that are so important to the S&P 500, companies like Apple and Tesla and NVIDIA and Broadcom, they have extraordinary revenue exposure to China. And as we get closer into earnings season, which really kicks off this Friday morning with the big banks, it's going to be really difficult for those companies and all of the trillions of dollars that they are collectively worth to give us a roadmap or any sense of confidence about what the road looks like moving forward. Because, hey, even the good news the president gave the markets today, it's a 90-day break. These aren't permanently new announced tariff policies. And we certainly know things can change by the minute with the Trump White House.
Good information. CBS News contributor J.D. Durkin, thank you so much. So lawmakers on Capitol Hill are also reacting to the rapidly changing tariff rules. During a House Ways and Means Committee hearing on trade, Nevada Congressman Stephen Horsford grilled U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. Let's take a listen.
What are the details? How long is the pause? How many days? How many weeks?
I understand it's 90 days. I haven't spoken to the president since I've been.
So the trade representative hasn't spoken to the president of the United States about a global